I just got finished watching Morgoth's review and his latest video, which is excellent, where he discusses how things have changed radically uh, just in the mere matter of days, if not hours, as the great pivot took place from what the new thing was before to what the new thing is now. And the way that Morgoth discusses this pivot is it's as though it's going from one extreme to another. You've gone from an extreme of a way of thinking that is supposedly characterized by deference to authority, trusting the experts, and so forth, to a mentality where you just have to be gung ho and trust your feelings and believe in good and evil and people who are actually experts, who actually know a thing or two about Russia, about Ukraine, about Eastern Europe, about NATO, and the complications of the current state of hostilities in that part of the world. People like that are now, just shoved to the side for favor of just being gung-ho, pro-war, Putin is Hitler, etc., and so on. What I want to talk about, though, in contradistinction to Morgoth, even though I think he's right in a sense, and I will link to the video below, but what I see is actually not a switch from one way of thinking to its radical opposite, but what I see a certain commonality in what was the old new thing versus the new thing, and that commonality I would characterize as a mainstreaming or a normalization of extremism, of a very extremist perspective point of view. Let me describe what I mean. When people first started talking about the crisis in the media and so forth, March, April of 2020 and onward, something that I noticed was there was hardly ever any moderation in as far as the position that we were being pressured into taking, the position that we were being propagandized, that we were being emotionally blackmailed, that we were being psychically raped, essentially into taking, was if you were a good person, you're going to be an extremist on this. You're not going to be a moderate. You're not going to be somebody who sees, okay, well, yes, this is a crisis. This is something we need to take steps with regard to, but at the same time, it's important to keep the economy going. It's important to keep people employed. Let's not just go overboard. Let's take some common sense kind of steps to let's say contain the spread, but at the same time, still live our lives as normally as possible, with these certain mitigations taken. But that kind of perspective, if you took that kind of perspective, you were a super bad guy. If you took that kind of perspective, you were somebody who wanted to kill all the grandmothers of the world. You had to take the perspective that, no, we've got to shut everything down. Don't worry about the consequences. No consequence. Don't talk to me about the economy. This is something much more important than the economy. How dare you? There was definitely that air of self-righteousness about the the way in which we were, or the manner in which we were propagandized and psychically assaulted, essentially. And any sort of question like, what are we doing? What's going to be the upshot of all of this? Is taking such extreme measures really commensurate to the severity of the crisis for a virus that has a greater than 99% survivability rate, a greater survivability rate than the common flu? People who pointed those things out, who asked those kinds of questions, were kicked off of social media and were treated like reprobates, even though they were asking perfectly reasonable questions. Because if you did not take this extreme stance, that this extremist position that got somehow positioned as, like the normal rational stance to take, then you were an awful person who just needed to be shunned and needed to lose his job and his bank account, and so forth. The typical kind of shunning that we see in our age. And later on with the Baj, it was very similar. In 2021, when the Baj started to make its way in to our lives, and people were talking about it, and the same authorities who were telling us to take this extremist stance or else we were bad people in 2020 were now telling us, you have to get this, for your done to yourself. You have to trust the experts, which again, the experts are the ones that they allow to speak on social media. The experts aren't the ones, with impeccable credentials and lots of research under their belt, but who had ideas or notions that contrasted with the contrived consensus that was being formed in the mainstream media and on social media. It was the approved experts, okay? Those same approved experts who told you, go inside your house, wear a mask, lose your job, close your small business, don't let your kids play with their friends. All of these off the wall things for an indefinite period of time, until we tell you otherwise. Not, the phony 2 weeks line that we heard, but it was for many people, it was months or years. So in 2021, these same kinds of experts, so-called experts, the approved experts, the vetted experts, the experts who were who not only had the credentials, some of them have credentials. I don't know what kind of credentials Bill Gates has. He never went to medical school, but let's pass over that for now. The approved experts all said, you have to get this thing done. You have to get the Baj. You have to get the injection. It's got to go into your arm. And at first it was with the carrot, the carrot and the stick. First they tried the carrot, get it and you'll get a year's supply of Krispy Kreme donuts. That was an actual thing. Like, they care so much about our health that they were going to give us a year's supply of Krispy Kremes. And or get a lap dance. This was a thing in Vegas. I think if you got the Baj, then you were entitled to a lap dance at a strip club. There were all kinds of ridiculous incentives. People were given bonuses for their jobs at work. That was what came first, and then came the mandates. That was the stick. That was, get this done, or you won't have a livelihood. Get this done, or we're coming after you, essentially. which again, I want to note for my purposes here, that it was and is still, that is an extreme position to take, all right? But it wasn't promoted as if it were extreme. It wasn't positioned as if it were extreme. It was positioned as if it were simply the rational, reasonable stand to take. When it was, the only thing more extreme than that would be if they went door to door and held you down and forced that poison into your arms, injected you without your recognizance. That's the only way they could have possibly been more extreme than these kinds of mandates that they were pushing. So once again, it was the radical position, the extreme position that got normalized, and moderate positions. People who not necessarily who went totally the other way and said, the Baj is terrible, nobody should get it, but who said things like people should get it if they want to get it, but they shouldn't be forced to get it. People like that were lumped to get together with the quote anti-vaxxers, the loathed and hated anti-vaxxers. It was this, just all kinds of rhetorical mischief was afoot. So now the great pivot, right, to Ukraine. And again, although I think Morgoth's video is great, and he's a better speaker than I am, and you should watch it if you haven't. I'll link to it below. But I'm gonna take a slightly different position than he takes. In that, to me, I think what I'm seeing is more of just the promotion of extremism. Right now, if you're somebody who thinks the situation in Ukraine is complicated, if you go on social media, if you go on, I don't know, some talk show that's in the mainstream media outlets, and you say something along the lines of the situation in Ukraine is complicated, then they come after you for saying that, for saying, well, there's more than one side to this issue. It's not just it's not a Manichaean struggle between good and evil. It's more complicated, without getting bogged down into the particulars. Okay, the invasion was not completely unprovoked. It was not something that the Russians just decided to do because they just thought they'd be evil and brutal, because that's just the way that those Russians are, which is the way that it's being portrayed. The very extreme, unreasonable position that's being portrayed as reasonable to right now in this current new thing. If you say something like, NATO played a role in creating the conditions under which this invasion happened, if you say something like that, then they come roaring and screaming at you, and you get booted off of social media, and you lose your job, and you lose your bank account, and you're unpersoned. It's the typical thing, but just with a new applied to a new set of circumstances. But what I want to draw attention to isn't the tyranny of wokeism and SJWism and all that stuff, which has already been talked about a lot. What I want to draw attention to is the way in which they position, and by they I mean those with the power to do this, those who have clout and control and the ability to propagandize and funding to propagandize from official bodies, governmental bodies or non-governmental bodies that are allied with the government, and so forth. They want you to say, no, there's only one position to take with regard to Ukraine, and that is that Russia bad. Russia bad. Now, the only way they could possibly be more extreme than they've been with this position right now is to say we need to go over there now and bomb the hell out of them, and every able-bodied man and woman, because women should go too, because woohoo, fourth wave feminism. There's no different. Gender doesn't exist anymore. So every one of us, binary or non-binary persons, should do our part. Should go over there and kill as many Russians as possible. I mean, they're not. That's the extreme they're not quite going to, and the reason they're not going to that extreme is because there's a little bit of reason that they have that says Russians got this stockpile of nukes. We can't really go that far, or else, mutually assured destruction, that kind of thing. Not that they care too much about our safety, health, and well-being, but they don't want global thermonuclear war, to quote the old movie War Games, where the only way to win the game was not to play. So they don't quite go to that extreme, but the position that they take is the extreme one. It is the simplistic one. It is Russia bad. And if you go anywhere beyond Russia bad, if you say, yes, Russia is doing a bad thing, did a bad thing in this invasion, they're doing bad things over the course of this invasion, lots of Ukrainian citizens are suffering and being killed, and that's awful, that's an atrocity, those are war crimes. If you say that and also add, yes, but there's other things in the mix as well. If you say that, if you try to go anywhere beyond Russia bad, then then you're in their sights, you're in their crosshairs. So once again, what they're trying to do here, just as they tried to do it before, and again, kind of contra what Morgoth says, although I think we're essentially on the same page, but we're phrasing things slightly differently, or I'm noticing something slightly differently than he did. But we're both against the complete insanity that has taken over the West. But once again, there's this commonality of be extreme, or else you're a bad person, or else you're a Putin stooge, a Putin apologist. Putin is Hitler, and so forth and so on. So those are just my thoughts. And Morgoth said his in about half the amount of time that I managed to say mine. So I appreciate you sitting through all of my video, but do go watch his as well, and you'll be even more informed. Anyway, thanks for watching. My name's Andy Nowicki. Check out my work at altrightnovelist.com. My latest book, The Insurrectionist, may be purchased from terrorhousepress.com.